Hello, welcome back to Blender Sushi Live Noding. In this episode, we're gonna continue with our rigid body dynamic simulation. Basically, today we're gonna try to emit some rigid body using animation nodes in a way that is more like a pulse emission. So it's not like every frame emission, but like a pulsing. Let's try with a cube here and turn this into a rigid body. Make it active by default, and let's have a floor. So this guy by default will just fall into the floor. And next one, we're gonna later on we probably need to increase the rigid body simulation time. But for now, we're just gonna leave it like that. Maybe I can actually turn this into a box, so it's gonna be a little bit faster. So a little bit more stable. So I'll save this real quick. So this is gonna be animation nodes, RBD, Emit. And right away, we're gonna jump into compositing, turn on animation nodes. And with this guy, this is gonna be our master. The master should not actually be simulating, but we will see. It's gonna use object instancer and get our object here. And I think we need to have a copy of full object and a deep copy. And for the instance, we're gonna increase this over time. Object transform output. This is gonna be outputting our objects. It should not be at 0, 0, 0, maybe a little bit higher, like that. And we're gonna use frame plug into the instance. If we do this, we're actually gonna emit a rigid body for every frame. So let's see if this is actually working for us. Okay, so apparently this guy is the instance, and this guy is not sure what this is, but this guy is kind of emitting a rigid body for every frame. So that's kind of interesting. Let me pause that and then check it out. Okay, apparently this guy is kind of emitting objects per frame, but the rigid body is not working. And for that, probably, let's say, we probably need to have like some kind of group operation. So object group operations, and this guy unfortunately doesn't actually quite work with the multiple objects. So we need to use a loop. So let's select this guy, tap W, have a loop. And so object goes in here. So for every frame, now every object is going to become a rigid body. So we get that kind of effects because it's going to emit for every frame like continuously. So it's going to be like a little bit weird. It's kind of interesting simulations to see. Kind of try if the floor is really big. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. You see, where's the master? I think the master is keep on emitting objects and then it's creating this kind of effects. It was kind of accidental. And the rigid body actually stopped at around 250 frames, if I'm not wrong. I can't remember. I think it's somewhere here. So rigid body simulations has kind of a time. I'm not gonna do it today anyway. I'm not gonna try to find it somewhere here. Oh, actually here. By default, rigid body cache is only 250 frames. Let's increase this to 1000. So let's get back to our objects here. So we have our cube. What is this guy? I think we don't need this. We can just delete it. Or yeah, that doesn't matter. Anyway, for the frame here, if we plug this into the instance, it's gonna generate one object per frame, and we don't want that, so we need to have some kind of a mask trick here. So frame, and then use a float math, and I think we can kind of divide it floor division. This is a really cool one. So basically, if we have a frame number goes into floor divisions, and we are using like a fractional value, what we're gonna have is if we use a viewer, instead of like a frame going from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that, this guy will actually kind of I think stay longer. So I think I was wrong. Don't use like fractional value. Just use like a 10, and you can see it's gonna stay at 1 for around 10 frames, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. So it goes up a little bit slower. We can increase this like 25. So it's gonna emit one rigid body for every 25 frames. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you can see it's already happening. And let's increase this to 1000 frame. And this one, so back to 10. So this is just the basic what we are trying to do. So emit an instance of rigid body per frames. It seems to be like following the master all the time, which is pretty interesting. This one doesn't work too well. Maybe I need to use like a random vector. Or perhaps I need to put this inside the loop before I put it inside the group. Maybe I need to do that. Random vector, and then index goes in here. Objects here. So let's see what happened now. I'm still doing it. The effect is actually kind of interesting, but not what I want. So this guy really... okay, maybe this guy is acting just like emitter, so this guy will move around. So I need to use, maybe I put this guy outside. So just break that connection. This will stay. It's gonna go inside the rigid body dynamic, and this goes into the seed and location for our cube. Okay, so maybe something like that. The floor can go a little bit lower, and this random position for our instance. Okay, maybe this master should not be inside a group. I'm gonna remove this from rigid body. Okay, now it's a little bit better. So supposedly, I was expecting this position to change for our cube, but it doesn't happen. But at least our rigid body now is working correctly. So it's from this master, it's kind of emitting out like a child rigid body, and it's gonna keep going until the simulations finishes. So I think it's very cool effects. Let's say we make this like 5000, and then back to our setting for rigid body and increase this to 5000 as well. If I'm not wrong, you can practically like emit like a different shapes each time. I was expecting the master to kind of move around. It doesn't seem to be doing it. Yeah, but see the effects happening, and then you can kind of fill up. If you have like a box, you can fill up the box this way. So if for example, if the floor itself is actually a box, it probably needs to solidify this guy, add some kind of thickness. Well, actually, I need to delete the face first. Add some kind of thickness, apply, and now hopefully, oh, actually, I'll also need to change something in the rigid body. So by default, it's gonna fall and it's gonna jump. It's gonna bump. See, that's wrong. We need to change the passive rigid body into a mesh. By default, it's like just a convex hull. Okay, now it should be working a little bit better. Hopefully the normal is correct. Okay, so now we are filling up this box. And I can keep running the simulations for 5,000 frames until the whole box is filled up. So it's emitting one box for every frame. Maybe I can make it so it's emitting like a couple of boxes for every frames. Maybe that's also can be interesting. And the position of this master can be more randomized. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for this live noding. So it's quite interesting setup. You can actually, instead of using box, use any kind of 3D objects here, and it's gonna emit it. This kind of effects is actually similar to Houdini. If you ever use a 3D software called Houdini, it can do this kind of rigid body dynamics and mixing it with particle. So it's very, very particle, very cool, powerful. In this case, we are not emitting particles, but this guy is just like an object. So that's still pretty interesting effects. I'm probably gonna continue this until 5,000 frames and then take a snapshot. So, but I'll stop the recording here. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.